headlines on RT International. Russia and Syria have halted airstrikes in rebel-held Aleppo ahead of a humanitarian pause to let civilians and militants leave safely. That's while the government-held part of the city is regularly shelled from there, killing and wounding civilians.
أنا بدي ترجع أجري.
And the US State Department appears to contradict itself on dealing with civilians in Syria's Aleppo and Mosul in Iraq as the US-backed Iraqi army begins a military operation in that ISIL stronghold.
Oh, right, so your account's closed, go away. Thanks very much. Charming.
As NatWest Bank gives notice to close the accounts of RT UK, we get reactions from the street and talk to some high-profile figures. Also, a Muslim American family decides Pakistan is a safer bet than North Carolina after their 7-year-old son claims he was beaten by classmates on a school bus. Your latest worldwide news headlines live on RT International. From me, Rory Souchet, and the entire crew, welcome to your headlines. Russia and Syria have halted airstrikes in Aleppo to prepare for a humanitarian pause which is to take place on Thursday. The news was announced during a meeting of the Russian Defense Ministry.
Starting from 10 o'clock today, Russian and Syrian air forces have halted airstrikes in the Aleppo area. The move is necessary for the launch of a humanitarian pause on the 20th of October.
Let's get details on this right now from RT's Daniel Hawkins, standing by just in front of the Kremlin there, downtown Moscow. Well, what do we know so far, Daniel?
Well, Rory, these airstrikes were initially due to be halted, as we heard there earlier, on Thursday to create a window for those humanitarian operations to take place. But the decision was later changed to stop all military activity in the area 2 days early in the build-up to that operation. So as of this morning, both the Syrian and Russian militaries have halted all military activity in the area. This will allow medical staff to have access to those who are injured and sick, something they haven't been able to do now for many weeks due to that intense fighting. And also, several corridors have been created to enable not only civilians to leave eastern Aleppo to evacuate, but also for any militants to leave, including even with their weapons. So an amnesty, if you like, from the area for any militants. Now, aside from this very crucial chance to provide aid and humanitarian relief to the population, this is also a chance, of course, for a separation of al-Nusra terrorist other groups from the moderate opposition, as proposed, of course, several weeks earlier by Russia at the UN Assembly. Russia's ambassador to the UN, Vitaly Churkin, didn't mince his words, certainly, when he described what options those al-Qaeda affiliated groups had in the city of Aleppo.
We cannot declare Nusra people honorary citizens of Eastern Aleppo or honorary citizens of Aleppo. Something needs to be done about them. One way to deal with them is for the moderate fighters to tell them to go, because they outnumber, Nusra quite considerably. Another way for them is to leave Syria with the arrangements which were proposed by Stefan de Mistura. Or a way must be found to defeat them. They cannot simply be allowed to stay there, making the life of civilians miserable, as they have been doing for such a long time.
Well, this halt to military activity and indeed the humanitarian pause has been preceded over the last several weeks by intense fighting, as we heard there in the city, with casualties on both sides in eastern Aleppo from airstrikes from Russian and Syrian air forces, which have received quite a widespread coverage in much Western media. But also deaths in western Aleppo, with shelling consistently happening on almost a daily basis from terrorists based in the east of Aleppo, and indeed many children falling victim to that shelling. Our correspondent on the ground there, Murat Gaziev, he's just made another report about the consequence of this, which we can have a look now, but we must warn our viewers that what you're about to see may be distressing.
Aleppo is a city of sad stories. And here's one of them. 10 people, 2 families, living in this one room. Sad, right? Gets sadder.
بحس اجري عم تنقطع مباري هيك من وجع ما بحك وقت هيك ما بعرف ايش بيصير بتحكني.
13-year-old Reem lost her foot in rebel shelling 3 weeks ago. It's been an incredibly painful experience for her. There are no strong enough painkillers to be given to her out of hospital. All the ones available off the shelf are weak. Her life changed on an ordinary day as she was walking home from school. It can happen to anyone, and everyone knows it. It's just that nobody expects it to happen to their own flesh and blood.
ما تصورت يعني انه هيك بنتي في هالموقف هيك. زعلت كثير وقتلت في حال يعني ما بعرف ايش بدي احكي يعني ما بيطلع الكلام ما بعرف.
Reem was lucky, as these things go. She survived a shell blast from just meters away. Yet, how do you explain that to a 13-year-old girl?
ايه انا بدي ترجع اجري. بدي ترجع اجري مثل ما كانت.
That was a sad story. This is a crushingly depressing story. 6-year-old Amr Satut. He took 4 pieces of shrapnel to the head, and nobody knows whether he will ever wake up. The damage to his brain, doctors told us, was enormous. We asked his father if he could, what would he say to the people who did this?
بس هذا اجرام بحق الاطفال. طفل عمره 5 سنين ايش ذنبه؟ ايش ذنبه بالك جوات بيته لحتى يجي هالشيء هذا؟ ايش سوى؟ ايش هو الجرم اللي ارتكبه؟ وين الامن الامان كلنا عايشين فيه؟ وين المرحله اللي وصلنا لها بعد 5 سنين 6 سنين ارهاب؟
A few rooms away was another patient, fresh out of surgery. He's only just learned to walk.
The child is 2 years old. He was shot in the stomach and the operation lasted for 4 hours. He is now stable.
He was hit by a stray bullet, and as long as he lives, he will be reminded daily of a war which began before he was born. 13-year-old Muna, brought in 3 days ago, shrapnel to the head. She's in the same situation. She's in an induced coma. But whether she wakes up or she does not, this bed in this Aleppo hospital won't stay empty for long. Morad Gazdiev, RT in Aleppo.